Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today we're going to be doing my first update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan for 2021. I am so happy to be finally doing this project after a short hiatus. I came back and I have been having an absolute blast with this project yet again, which is what I had completely anticipated because this project is always so much fun for me. My friend Alexi is the one who came up with this concept and the idea of just rotating through your eyeshadow collection with the goal of trying to hit pan on as many shadows as possible. So I definitely drew inspiration from her over the past few years, and this year has proven to be no different because she's actually doing this project yet again, and I'm so happy to see her back with this project because she really inspired me to start doing this myself back in 2019, and ever since it's been so much fun. So much fun for me. So when I introduced this project a month ago, or just over a month ago, I rolled in this little color story right here, which is definitely interesting and wasn't really something that I was expecting. I mean, you never know what you're getting into with Pan Those Eyeshadows, but I hadn't really prepared myself for like these very cool tones. This is a very like I feel it kind of like a disconnected sort of color story, but it is really beautiful and it's proven to be a ton of fun for me. In fact, I have used these shadows so much more than I was expecting. So I'm going to share with you what all of the shadows are looking like and the amount of times that I've used them. And yeah, let's just get on into all the progress that I've made on this little color story right here. The first one is this like very cool gray. It's like a slightly taupey kind of purple cement kind of color. And it is Mercury from ABH Subculture palette. And I actually use this more than I would have probably expected. I knew this was a color that I enjoyed and I found kind of inspiring, but it wasn't something I had reached for much in recent times. It's this shadow right here, by the way, and I've used it actually 12 times over this past month. Typically, when I sit down and do these updates, I'll use a shadow anywhere between like 7 and maybe 10 times. If it's lower than that, then it's something that I'm just not inspired by. But I used this 12 times, and I think that in part, the reason why I was able to reach for this 12 times is because I've come to really enjoy this through my brows. I remember seeing several other people actually pan this eyeshadow by using it as a brow shade, and I was hesitant for sure, but it's actually been something that I've really enjoyed. I'm using it today through my brows, and I did initially kind of struggle with it. I found that it looked very heavy and it could look very gray, very cool on my coloring, and it was a little bit disjointed looking on me, but actually recently with a lighter hand and with a different technique where I kind of just press it into my brows, into the sparse areas instead of stroking it and making it like a line of shadow, I've been really just pressing it into the sparse areas and tapping off a lot of the product as well. So I've been able to really get a good amount of use out of this. I'm nowhere near pan though, I think. These are very dusty kind of shadows, so it's possible I could hit pan on it soon, but I think it's probably going to take me about another 10 uses. We'll see. In the next month, I'm going to hopefully hit pan on it. But for the time being, I'm really happy with the progress and with the realizations that I've made. I haven't used it exclusively as a brow product by any means. I have used it many times actually as an eyeshadow, and those days when I wear it as a brow product and an eyeshadow, I just count that as one use. So anytime that a product touches my face is one use, no matter what kind of capacity I use it in. So even with other projects that, outside of this one, that's the same case. So if I use something on my cheeks and on my lips, that's one use, even though I did use it in 2 different ways. I feel like I need to clarify that. So I've actually used this in more than maybe 12 different instances, I suppose, but 12 times on my face is what I've counted, and I'm really happy with that number and with the progress on it. I don't know if you can tell from there, but there is, you know, a pretty decent sized dip starting to form in the shadow. I really feel like it didn't look that well loved prior to rolling into this project, and I'm really happy to see that it's actually looking pretty well loved. This palette as a whole is actually looking pretty abused, and that's the way I want all my palettes to really look. So I'm really happy with the state of this palette, and I foresee myself being able to hit pan on that probably by my next update, especially if I keep with the same momentum that I've had over this past month. This next shadow is this matte red right here. It is a slightly brick kind of red, but it pulls as a very true red in my opinion, although it does have a slight brown undertone, and it is a depotted shade that came from my Colourpop Yes Please palette. It's the shade Spoiled, and I have depotted all of my Colourpop palettes just into one Z palette together, just because I do find that I reach for it more often like this, and honestly I find this way more inspiring than each individual palette. So it is this shade right here. It's the one that looks probably the most dusty out of all of them because I've been reaching for it over this past month. However, I only used it 3 times. See what I mean? Like if I use something like less than 7 times, I'm clearly not inspired by it. But also you have to remember that with this color story, like that red is the one that's really out of place, I think, and it is the one that's the most challenging. So I've only used it 3 times, but that's okay. 3 times more than I probably would have reached for it over this past month anyway. So I'm happy with that. I definitely need to keep working on this. This is something that perhaps I'll have in here for several months because these mattes, even though these pans are very, very small, they are so deep and hard to hit pan on. And as you can see, I definitely have hit pan on, you know, a couple of the matte shadows from Colourpop over the years, but this red is something that I think is a little less versatile than like a cream or like a light orange kind of tone. So it is something that's going to take me quite some time. I use it in a very small amount when I'm reaching for it, and it's something that I just reach for very infrequently. There is a little bit of usage showing on it. It's that shade right there. There's a little bit of usage apparent on it. However, it is nowhere near even being like a dip. So it's gonna be a struggle. I may end up rolling this out after the 15 uses. We'll see how things go in the coming months. I think I may be more inspired to use this in the summer, and especially if I'm able to get like an orange or a yellow or a gold or something along those lines into this project, perhaps I'll be able to make more momentum. But it's good to check in and realize, oh, 3 times over 30 days. Not great. The next shadow is this matte chocolate brown right here, and actually the following one here as well is a duochrome kind of purple shade. These both are in the same palette. They both come from my Nabla Soul Blooming palette, so I'm just going to talk about them in tandem. And it really wasn't a challenge for me to reach for either of those eyeshadows because I had actually rolled this into my Shop My Stash for the month of March, and then I introduced this project, and this is something that I was wanting to reach for. I was kind of gravitating towards, and it was something I felt compelled to use in my routine, so it worked out really perfectly. But let's talk about the actual shadows themselves. So Caravaggio is this chocolate brown matte shade right here, and I've actually used this 15 times now, which I feel like is pretty substantial for me. I haven't worn makeup every single day in the month of March, so I think I actually reached for this every single time, if not almost every single time that I did my makeup. There isn't a massive dip in there. These mattes are very, very blendable and very, very creamy, but you really don't need a lot, especially with a color that's a bit deeper. For my preferences, I mean, I don't tend to use this in a very large quantity when I wear it, but I have worn it frequently. So I am going to be rolling this out of this project. For the time being, or just for this update rather, I'm not going to put it back into my spreadsheet so I don't have to roll it again just immediately, but I am going to throw it back into my spreadsheet so that I can roll it into this project again, maybe use it another 15 times or see where it goes from there. But I am going to be reaching for this palette continually anyways because I have also been working on this shade right here, which is called Garden Gate, and as you can see, I've not yet hit pan on it. It is a stunning, beautiful, like pinky, purpley, periwinkly, bluey, lilac kind of shifty, delicious eyeshadow. It's this shade right here, and I feel like it's so transformative. It goes with so many different types of cool and warm eyeshadows. If you layer it on top of something, it can completely change the entire look of the shadow. If you pair it in tandem with different undertones, it can just kind of change it in its entirety. And it's so beautiful and so dimensional and really, really stunning shadow. It's comparable to other shadows for sure, but I do think that it does stand out in comparison to other comparable kind of like duochromes of this nature. It is really unique. And I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but I think this palette is discontinued. My heart is breaking over this. I think that this is discontinued. I cannot find it anywhere. I can't even find it on the Nabla site. So I think this little beautiful palette is no longer available, which is truly heartbreaking because I have really come to really enjoy this palette only, not just recently, but more so now than I did ever before, because I don't know, I'm just finding this so inspiring. So it really breaks my heart. I'm hoping that it's not discontinued, but it seems that way. Anyways, okay, I gotta get myself back on track. I don't know why. I guess because I've not been filming as frequently. I'm just feeling way more chatty when I do finally sit down to film, so I apologize for that. But I've used this 7 times now. I feel like 7 uses for this is pretty good because it is a, you know, very unique shade, and it's something that the look kind of has to revolve around this shadow. However, I have worn it 6 times on my eyes, and 1 time was as a nail polish, and the dip is pretty good due to the fact that I wore it as a nail polish. This looked so beautiful, so beautiful on my nails, and I'll probably wear it again that way in the later half of this month. I don't think for the next little while I'll be painting my nails all that often because I'm just so slammed with schoolwork, but wow, okay, 7 uses is really good, and I really did enjoy it. Every time I reached for it, I thought it looked so fun and so pretty, and I don't see it being a problem being able to use this at least just another 7 times in this coming month. And you may or may not notice, or if you follow me on Instagram, you may be already aware, I did actually hit a little bonus pan in this palette as well, this shade called Gia. It's a like pinky kind of brown sort of shade, and I was just pairing it with so many different looks when I would reach into this palette, and I hit pan on it pretty quickly at the beginning part of the month, and it gives me hope. It gives me hope that I'll be able to hit more pans in this palette for sure, but I think this palette's looking really well loved, and I'm really happy about that. And before we get into the last shadow, why don't we just talk about the other amazing feat that I was able to accomplish this month. I hit pan on another bonus pan, which is this shade right here. This is a Colourpop pressed powder shadow. This is the shade Wait For It. I actually had this in Pan Those Eyeshadows, I think for my very last month of Pan Those Eyeshadows 2020, and it wasn't something that I knew was going to be so much of a challenge. Obviously I hadn't hit pan on it during that project, but I think it was only for 1 month that I had it rolled in. But I ended up hitting pan on it in March after honestly wearing this probably 15 or 20 more times since I had it in the project at the end of last year. So I reached for this many a times over the past few months with the hope and dream of hitting pan on this. I wore it as a blush, I wore it as an eyeshadow, and we finally have the tiniest little bitty pan. That's just a good little bonus pan. It feels like a huge freaking accomplishment, even though it wasn't like a focus shade. I'm really happy to have done that, so I figured I would share that with you today. But the last shadow that is in this project is this right here. It's a gorgeous gunmetal metallic shade. Something that's out of my comfort zone for sure. The red is not particularly out of my comfort zone. It just is a little bit out of place, I think. But this one is really, really out of my comfort zone. So I haven't used it as much as I would have hoped to. I've actually reached for it only 5 times, but one of those times was as a nail polish as well. This is it right here. It is looking really well loved because, like I said, I did wear it 1 time as a nail polish, and it is so pretty as a nail polish. Oh my gosh, I loved it. I really did love it. So I'm definitely gonna wear it again in that sort of way. And after 7 uses, I definitely do think that there's some decent wear, and I can foresee myself being able to hit pan on this perhaps next month, maybe the one after. It all depends on what my usage ends up being on it, but these lighter shades that I have hit pan on in this eyeshadow palette, oh my god, did I even say what this palette was? This is the Sleek Eye Divine Storm palette, by the way, but These other two shimmers, I've had them in my Pan Those Eyeshadows before, and I believe I reached for each of them just about like 12 to 15 times in order to hit pan. And because I have used the shade Caravaggio 15 times already, I will be rolling that shadow out. Sometimes I do end up using the shadow more than 15 times, but I just know I'm going to be reaching for that palette anyways, and there is no real visible dip happening in that shadow yet, so I don't want to just like keep working on it and not have something else in its place that I can maybe potentially hit pan on a little bit faster. So I am going to be keeping, or rolling that one out rather. So I have decided to keep all of my black eyeshadows in my spreadsheet, even though in the introduction I rolled one in and I was like, that ain't happening. What I'm gonna do with the black eyeshadow is if it rolls in and I want to use it, so be it. Perhaps the color story will be suited to it, my preferences may be suited to it, so I don't want to completely eliminate them. However, if I'm not feeling it, if it's not something that's going to be my vibe at the moment or whatever, then what I'm going to do is I am going to still use the same palette that the black came from, but I'm going to randomize a new shade specifically from that palette. It's going to be kind of like a wild card, but still there's going to be that element of random because that's just my favorite part of this project. I love randomizing eyeshadows from my collection. So that's what I'm going to do. I haven't even counted out how many black eyeshadows I have in my collection, and I should have done that, quite honestly, but I kind of impulsively decided I was going to film this video today. It was not my intention with how my day was going to play out, but all of that aside, I have 303 eligible eyeshadows. That includes my black eyeshadows, and it excludes the 5 shadows that are currently in this project and the 2 that I did hit pan on. I always remove the eyeshadows that I've hit pan on from my number so that I can always just have eyeshadows that I really want to be working on, which is everything. Everything that's in a pan is in there. So we're gonna roll one new one to put in the place of Caravaggio, and that is going to be number 216. So I'm gonna take a look through my spreadsheet and come back and share with you what that shadow is and the new color story. Okay, so I'm back. I'm excited to see what this shadow looks like in combination with the rest of my color story, and I'm really excited about reaching for this palette. This is the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette, and the shade that came in the spot number 216 in my spreadsheet is the Shadow Granddaddy right here. And this is a beautiful, like grungy gold kind of shade. It's not a true gold. This one is definitely more of a like warm, yellowy orange kind of gold, and then this one is more of like a dirty gold kind of shade, and I haven't used this near enough, but I freaking love this palette, so I'm really excited to be rolling this shadow into this project. And oh my goodness, yeah, it's like a dirty gold. I really don't know how else to describe that shadow. So pretty. It's definitely going to be something that is very, very different from the rest of my color story, but perhaps it'll be something that works really well with that red. I don't know. Why don't we swatch the rest of the shadows so I can share with you what my new color story is looking like with this addition. So here is that new selection of shades. It is getting farther from cohesive than it was previously. But my goodness, I'm really excited. So I do feel like it's a good balance between metallics and mattes. For me personally, I really like having like 3 metallics because I can use them in a wide variety of different ways, and I find when I do reach for metallics as well, they're something that I'm able to hit pan on a little bit faster than mattes. But yeah, these are going to be hard to wear in combination with one another, so my usage might end up being a little bit less in this coming month on each shadow. However, I'm going to ensure that I try to reach for every single shadow several times in the rest of this month. And I have no idea how long it's going to end up taking me to be able to hit pan on the shade Granddaddy, because as you can see, I've not yet hit pan on any of the shadows in this palette. I have hit pan on a metallic in my Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette, but the formula of that metallic shimmer is entirely different than the formula of this one, in my opinion. That one's much more flaky, it's much more loose, and these are definitely more of a creamier kind of metallic from my experience. So I have no idea what to expect with the amount of times I'm gonna have to reach for this, but I love this palette. I just had it in my Shop My Stash for the month of March, and that goes to show it's something that I really do enjoy. And I imagine that I will have a lot of fun with this going into the more spring and summer kind of months. And that grungy gold color is just, you know, everybody knows. I love greeny golds. I love greens. I love golds. I love these kinds of shades, grungy kind of tones, like those kind of ugly, dirty kind of colors. That's so me and what I love. So I am really excited to be reaching for this palette through this project and making it a priority. I'm really enjoying this project so far. I am so happy to be doing it yet again. Thank you so much for all of your encouragement and excitement in my introduction to this project. I hope that you enjoyed watching today's update, but that is going to be everything for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone!